activity. Inflation is an economic term to describe an increase in the general level of price. The term inflation is from the Latin terms inflate, meaning to blow up or inflate, and it was first used in a monetary sense to describe an increase in the amount of money in 1838. According to article released from the Statistics Department, the Consumer Price Index (CPI) grew moderately by 2.2% from 122.5 in February 2021 to 125.2 in February 2022. This increase was mostly due to an increase in food inflation. According to Chief Statistician Uji Mahidin, the increase was more than Malaysia's 1.9% annual average inflation from February 2011 to February 2022. The rise in food inflation, which makes up the greatest portion of the CPI overall, continues to be a significant factor in the nation's inflation. In Malaysia, price for some items would significantly rise if the government does not step in as a result of the ongoing crisis between Russia and Ukraine. The president of the Malaysian Federation of Hawker and Petty Traders Association, Dato Seri Rosli Sulaiman, predicts that when oil prices rise as a result of the conflict, the cost of non-controllable commodity will also rise. The cost of some raw material, operating expenses, and logistics would all be impacted by an increase in oil price.
Hi, my name is Lauije. I'm taking the course of Bachelor of Artificial Intelligence. Today I am going to share about the impact of inflation. So the first one is the high inflation will erode purchasing power. In an inflationary environment, unevenly rising price erodes purchasing power. This is inflation's primary and most pervasive effect. An overall rise in price over the time reduces the power of consumer, since a fixed amount of money will afford progressively less consumption. Consumer lost purchasing power whether inflation is running at 2% or at 4%. They just lose it twice as fast as the higher rate. Combating would ensure that the overall price level would increase more than twice as much over the long run if long run inflation were to double. For instance, the same product that cost 2 ringgit 6 months ago might cost 4 ringgit due to inflation. The latest change of Malaysia's inflation was increased from 3.4% to 127.4 in June 2022 as against 123.2 in the same month of the preceding year. The food index increased 6.1% and remained as the main contributor to the rise in the inflation during the month of June 2022. Now let's move to the second point, which is raise interest rate. The right step of these inflationary policies, those aimed at reducing inflation, depend on the cause of inflation. If the Malaysian economy has overheated, central banks, which is Bank Negara Malaysia, are committed to ensuring price stability. So normally they will increase the interest rate. So nowadays, inflationary pressures have increased sharply due to a rise in commodity price, strained supply chain, and strong demand conditions, particularly in the US. Consequently, several central banks are expected to adjust their monetary policy setting at a faster pace to reduce inflationary pressures. Echoing May reasoning, the decision to hike rates again in July was mainly due to stably high inflation fueled by the impact of the Russia and Ukraine war and strict pandemic-related lockdown in China. The global growth outlook will continue to be affected by the developments surrounding the conflict in Ukraine, COVID-19, global supply chain conditions, commodity price shocks, and financial market volatility. In addition, a country's currency can decline in value when the money supply and price increase. For example, if 1 million is in circulation in the US and 30 million in Malaysia, this may suggest an exchange rate of 1/30. However, if the Federal Reserve creates a furthermore 1 million, taking the total of 2 million, then the ratio will decline to 1/15. This is just an estimation as the exchange market fluctuated daily. However, the premise remains the same. The value against other currencies decrease when price inflate and money supply expands. Often, inflation can result from other factors that contribute to exchange rate fluctuations. In other words, a fall in the exchange rate causes inflation rather than the other way around. Although an increase in the money supply can create inflation and cause the exchange rate to fall, a decline in the exchange rate can cause push inflation. Simply, this is where the price of import goods increase as the domestic currency can buy fewer goods. For Malaysia, the ringgit fell as much as 0.2% to 4.5015 per dollar as it breached the 4.5002 mark reached in January 2017. The Malaysian currency is now at its weakest level since January 1998 during the Asia financial crisis. As the cost of goods and services increase, consumers have to spend a higher percentage of their income to maintain their current standard of living. But if wages don't undergo a proportionate rise, consumers have to spend more even for basic necessities. However, even if consumers earn more during inflation, they are likely to be pushed into a higher tax bracket. Now, low-income earners are also at a disadvantage, since the minimum wage does not necessarily rise at times of inflation. In turn, their nominal income lags behind the rest of the economy. For instance, a 20 kg bag of wheat flour jumped by 77% to 75 ringgit. Meanwhile, wages have jumped between 25% and 33% due to the pension of workers despite a minimum wage of 1,500 ringgit. This may be a simple basics, but it clearly shows that the apparent rise in today's living costs that comes from higher cost push pressures rather than the demand pull. Lastly, the rising of inflation has become a concern of many retirees of people who tend to retire soon. They will worry about what sort of lifestyle they can afford. For example, if you need 8 million in the first year of your retirement, based on 3% inflation rate, the 8 million only be worth for 4,004,294 in 20 years. This is what inflation does. It will have negative effect on your retirement saving account. Inflation affects people differently, and there are who may not feel the inflation as much as others. However, retirees tend to spend large portion of their income on items highly affected by inflation, Additionally, high inflation and rising rates may create additional volatility in the stock market, which affects retirees more since they are actively taking withdrawal from their investment account. They may spend a large part of their income on housing, food, gas, and healthcare, all of which are seeing the full effect of inflation. Retirees are much more likely to be dependent on their saving than a working person who have the opportunity to increase in wage or salaries.
I would like to discuss about the solution of the inflation that most of the country implemented now. The first solution that we propose is the price control. Government to control the increase in price of the basic goods and service and keep the inflation rate in the moderate level. The government can do the price regulation on the selected fruit subsidized as well as the electricity rebates for the domestic consumer. This is because the restriction can be used in the conjunction with pay control to reduce the wage push inflations. And the second solution that we propose is the contractionary monetary policies. These policies is to reduce the amounts of money in an economy through raising the interest rates. By raising the cost of credit and lowering both consumers and our company spending, this contributes to restrict the economic growth. For example, Malaysia's central bank increased its key overnight policy rate by 25 basis point to 2.5% at this meeting in September 2022. And lastly, the third solution that we propose is using the economic tool to influence the aggregate demand. Malaysia used the supply policy strategy to control the price increase through the liberalizations of the import and the local productions. The preferable strategies of reducing the inflation now is to pursue the contractionary monetary policy, although we call it soft landing, but it is challenging to achieve. That's also my presentation. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lee Yong Piao and I come from Group 2. And now I want to talking about the conclusion. Although infection, this topic has many aspects to solve. It is clear that the role of government is important for stability in the infection in Malaysia. Malaysians' purchasing power may be reduced by inflation, be it 2% or 4%. Consumers need to spend more of their salary to meet basic needs. So government can maintain the inflation rate at a desirable range by stabilizing price and wage increase proportionally. In addition, contractionary monetary policy is good strategy for rising interest by reducing the amount of money in an economy. Besides, Malaysia Central Bank can raise the cost of credit and lowering both consumer and company spending. This is to help to restrict economic growth because it is encourage bank and investor to purchase treasuries which promise a specific rate of return. In the end, although inflation is an economy term, but it is important and closely related to us. And that's all of my part. Thank you.